Hi, this is 7th grade lesson 24 on surface area for module 6. So we're going to be taking these very interesting shapes here and trying to find the full surface area of them. So if you remember in the previous lessons, when we think of surface area, we want to think of we're gift wrapping them. So we want to cover every corner, every side, the bottom, the top, everything in wrapping paper. So when we have things like that, organization is key. You really want to organize your work so that way you make sure you didn't accidentally forget something. So let's go ahead and get started with this image here. So I'm going to start with the top and bottom. All right, now if you look at the top and bottom, they are rectangular, which means they have sides as well as faces and and the base, all these little spots that we need to fill in. So let's talk about the sides for right now. So the sides, I have 4 of them because they are rectangular, and each of them is a 12 by 3. So when I multiply 12 times 3 and then multiply that by 4, I get 144. Let's look at the faces. Now the faces is going to be this top smooth area as well as the bottom. Okay, so for right now, let's just do the top, which is a 12 by 12. And that will also give me 144. And then instead of calling the bottom a face, we're just going to go ahead and call it the base. And that's also a 12 by 12. But in all reality, you could have said 2 of these for faces. It's the same thing. All right, now we do need to include this post that is inside the base of the top here. Okay, this post is taking up some space. So we're not going to wrap it and then stick this piece onto this post. Okay, the post is already there, which means we need to take this 144 and subtract the size of this post. Now the size of this post is a 4 by 4. So 4 times 4 gives me 16. So now I'm going to subtract 16 from 144 and I get 128. So that's the number we want to use. So now let's add up our total that we have so far. Okay, and that's just covering this whole top piece. So I have 144 plus 144 plus 128 gives me a grand total of 416. Now, I do actually have 2 of these identical things. This one also has the post. This one's also a 12 by 12 and a 12 by 3. So I'm going to take this answer here and go ahead and multiply it by 2, which gives me a total of 832. Okay, so that's the top and the bottom. So now let's talk about the middle section. And we'll just go ahead and call it middle. For the middle, I have sides. I have 4 sides because this is also rectangular. So let's go ahead and write down we have sides. And since I have 4 of them and all of them are 4 by 8s, that'll give me 128. So that's it. Now we just add these 2 together. So the big total or grand total, however you want to think of it, is going to be 832 plus 128 for 960. Now let's go ahead and put our units, inches squared. All right, that's that one. Let's try the next one. And this is a friendlier looking shape. A little bit easier for us to kind of break apart here. Since it is a square, if you notice 12 by 12 by 12, it's a full square and it's a cube. That means there are 6 sides. All of the sides are 12 and we're going to square that 12, which comes out to 6 times 144, which gives us a grand total of 864 inches squared. All right, that's all you have to do for that one. That one's easy. But now they're going to kind of take that shape and put a hole in it. You notice it's the same shape, same 12 by 12 by 12 cube, but now they have inserted this hole. And the hole is 4 inches. So it's a 4 by 4 by 4 by 4. It's also a square. So let's do the whole section. Now there's 4 of those. Now technically it's 12 long because we're going to picture that this hole goes all the way through, kind of like a donut. So we're going to say that there's 4 sides and all of them are a 12 by 4, which gives me a grand total of 192 for just the hole. Now let's do the cube. Now if we did up above, we did the cube as 6 and 12 squared, which we got was 6 times 144. Okay, but now we're also going to take that answer we got up above of 864, and we're going to subtract out this whole section. So we have 2 4x4s plus 4 12x4s. Okay, 2 4x4s gives us 32, and this gives us 192. All right, so this is taking out 2 of these, but that's taking out the 2 squares on the top. So I'm talking about this is coming from the surface. The top and the bottom is missing a 4x4. So we're going to take this out, but then we do need to consider this 192 here that we got up here with the hole and add that back in because we're actually going to wrap the inside of the hole. So that's not a negative, that's a positive. We're going to add that. So first, let's take our grand total here. We have 864. We're going to take away that 32 hole that is coming out. So no longer, because we're not going to cover this up in wrapping paper, it's still going to be a hole. So when we take 2 4x4s, we're wrapping around the hole, but we're actually going to wrap through the inside of the hole. So you have to kind of think of it that way. So we're going to subtract that and then add in the wrapping paper we will use to continue all the way through. And this will give me a grand total of 1,024 inches squared. All right, let's go on to the next one. Next one here, we have just a word problem, so we have to kind of picture it. We have a right rectangular pyramid, has a square base with a side length of 10 inches. The surface area of the pyramid is 260 inches squared. Find the height of the 4 lateral triangular faces. All right, now they did say that the base was a square, so I'm going to start by drawing a square. It always helps to kind of draw these a little bit on a slant when you're drawing 3D figures. Okay, and it's a 10 by 10 by 10 by 10. Now, if it's a pyramid, it means all the points come, all the sides come to one point. All right. Now we have a lateral face, so we're just going to kind of bring this down and show that it is a triangular right face here, a right pyramid. All right, so let's talk about the base first. The base is easy. That's a 10 by 10, which gives us 100. Then we have the faces. Now remember, faces are anything that's smooth. It's the smooth outside. It's the stuff that you can touch. I have 4 of those because it is sitting on a square base. And I have, let's see, we have 4 bases. This is a right triangle. So they said that it came out to 260 square inches. So we're going to take that, before we do the 4 faces, let's do the 260 minus 100, and that gives me 160. Okay, so that's dealing with just the faces here. If we take out the base, if the total is 260, we take out the base, we're left with 160. So now since I have 4 faces, I can divide this by 4. And that will give me 40 inches squared just for the bases, or the faces, excuse me. This one. All right, now let's talk about the triangle itself. Okay, the triangle, if you remember, is area equals 1/2 base times height. So we're going to say 40 is the area of the triangle, is half of 10 times h. All right, so now we're going to take half of 10 because 2 goes into 10 5 times. And this gives me 40 equals 5h. divide by 5. And that means my height is 8 inches. And that's because they wanted us to find the height. So this is 8 inches tall. So my two answers for this one is the area of the faces and the area of the height. All right. We have this figure here. And again, remember, we're going to wrap the entire thing in paper. So it says, determine the surface area of each figure. Assume all faces are rectangle, unless it is indicated otherwise. So everything's a rectangle because they didn't indicate otherwise. So let's talk about the top and the bottom. I'm just going to go ahead and start kind of organizing my work here. I have two 18 by 5s. So I have an 18 by 5 here. And I actually have an 18 by 5 here. It's just broken up. So here's a top, here's a top, and here's a top. Okay? So when I multiply all that together, I get 180. Let's talk about the inside. The inside, that's talking about, let me get a different color here. This is the inside, and I have one over here on this side. That's going to give me two 5 by 7s, which is going to give me 70. And then I have the right side. The right side is this 5 by 12 here. So I have two of those. I have two, well, we could say right and left, I suppose. Right and left, because there's one over here too. So right and left. So we're going to say two 5 by 12s, which is going to give me 120. And then I have the front and the back. All right, now the front and the back is a little different because I have all of this, but I'm missing this inside piece. So I'm going to start by first saying I have an 18 by 12. I have two 18 by 12s, but I'm then going to have to remove this piece here. So I'm going to say two 18 by 12s, and then I'm going to subtract an 8 by 7. So that gives me 2 times 216 minus 56. 2 times 160 is going to give me 320. All right, so now I have to put this all together for my grand total. Let's see, I've used all my colors. I'll use green. All right, so my grand total here, I have 180 plus 70 plus 120 plus 320 is going to give me a grand total of 690 meters squared. Number 2. Number 2, here we go. We have the top, which is a 25 by 8. And that gives me 200. So that whole piece there. Then I have the bottom, which is down here. And that's going to give me, I'm going to switch colors just real quick because it's kind of hard to see that. Let me just see if I can go to I'll go black. And the bottom is going to be a 24 by 8. Which gives me 192. All right, then I'm going to do, let's see the sides. I have a 23 by 8, which is over here. So 23 by 8 and plus this side here, which is a 16 by 8. So when I multiply both those together and then add them up, I get 312. All right. Now, we're not quite completely done because if you notice, we have this front and back issue. I've done all the sides and everything, but my front and back, because it is a trapezoid type deal here, this is not a perfect square because if you notice, it has a slant in it. So for the front and back, we're going to have to solve it just a little bit differently. We're going to use this formula where we say 2 times the quantity of half times, and then we're going to do 16 plus 23, and then multiply that by 24. So we're doing 16 plus the 23. So these two sides basically. You know what? Let me clean this up. Let me clean up my figure here. I got so much shading on, I don't want to confuse anybody. All right, let's try this again. So I'm going to do the 23 plus the 16 and then times that by the 24. But I'm going to take half of it because we're only talking about half of the one sides. All right, but then if you kind of notice, I'm taking half because I'm doing one side, but then I multiply it by 2 to get the other side. So it kind of cancels out at some point here, but that's okay. So we're going to say 2 times the quantity of half. Now 16 plus 23 is going to give me 39 times 24. All right, then I'm going to say 2 times the quantity of half times 936. Now 2 goes into 936 468 times. So you wind up with 2 times 468, which gives you back your 936. Like I said, it kind of cancels out. So there's your grand total for that, okay? So the overall total for everything I'll put up here, we have 200 plus 192 plus 312, and now plus that 936 for the front and the back, for the final total of 1640 centimeters squared. Okay, so number 3 is just like the one we did on the front page, our very first example. So I'm going to have you guys do number 3, and you're actually going to go ahead and finish the entire worksheet from here on. Okay, everything we've kind of covered up to this point, there is a very similar example for when you get working on your own. So I'm going to feel pretty confident knowing that you guys can do this pretty well on your own at this point. So that ends this video tutorial.